Welcome to another episode of Terror Tarot here on RUE MORGUE TV. My name is Laura Hokstad. I am your host and a tarot card reader. And on this show, we look at the use of tarot cards in horror films. And on today's episode, we are going to be looking at two films that examine the duality of man, the good versus evil in all of us, the man versus beast. And I think it's important for us to remember that even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the
wolf-flame moons, the autumn moon is bright.
Yes, of course, today we are going to be talking about the Universal classic monster movie, the 1941 version of The Wolfman. And we are also going to be looking at the slightly controversial remake in 2010 of the same name. The original Wolfman holds an impressive 91% on Rotten Tomatoes and stars Lon Chaney Jr., who plays Larry Talbot. And in this film, Larry is returning to his family home, Talbot Castle, after a long period away after learning that his brother has been killed. While helping his father set up his brand new telescope, he spies Gwen, the antique shop owner's daughter, next door. He becomes a little bit fascinated or obsessed with Gwen, so he makes his way over to the antique shop and starts talking with her. And he ends up buying this silver cane with a wolf's head on it and a pentagram. And during this conversation, he begins to learn about the local lore around werewolves in the area.
It shows the wolf and the pentagram, the sign of the werewolf.
Werewolf? What's that?
Oh, that's a human being who at certain times of the year changes into a wolf.
You mean runs around on all fours and bites and snaps and bays at the moon?
Oh, even worse than that sometimes.
We also learned that a group of Romani fortune tellers have just come into town, so he suggests that they go get their fortune read. And later that night when they meet up, it's not just Gwen and Larry, it's Gwen, Larry, and Gwen's friend Jenny, which I really respect because Gwen's already like, yo, I'm engaged and I don't want to go on a date with you, but she's being polite. And I mean, who wouldn't want to get your fortune told by a traveling group of fortune tellers? So I don't blame Gwen for that. Jenny is the first to get her fortune read. And when she goes into the caravan, she meets Bella, which is played by legendary film actor Bela Lugosi. As Bella starts drawing cards, he begins to get more and more fearful and scared. And us as the audience members don't actually get to see what cards he pulls, but as he's getting more and more distressed, he rubs his head, and then all of a sudden we see a 5-pointed star appear there. And then also it transfers over to Jenny's hand. She's terrified, he's freaked out. He tells her to get out of the caravan and run.
No. Now go away. Go quickly. Go!
Yes, I'm going!
Now, because the film doesn't show us what cards are actually pulled, we're kind of left to speculate. So if you'll allow me, I have done a bit of witchy guesswork on what these cards could possibly be. And those cards that I believe he pulls are the Ten of Swords. And along with that, I think we're going to see the Death card and the Moon. I brought these cards out because, first of all, the Moon card kind of looks at the unknown and the night and kind of this duality between the safety of the day and the mystery and darkness that comes with the nighttime. So I think if Bella was pulling this card first, that would be the one that would kind of signal to him, oh, we might have a werewolf on our hands here. The next card that I think could possibly come up for her is the Ten of Swords. And this card usually indicates a kind of a painful loss or some kind of all-encompassing finality. Spoiler alert for this 1941 film, but Jenny leaves the caravan and is attacked and killed by a werewolf. So the Ten of Swords could very well indicate that kind of finality for her. And then, of course, we have the Death card, which we've said many times before doesn't always mean actual death, but it can in some cases. But it is also about transformation. And I can't think of a more appropriate card to come along with the Moon card when we're talking about a possibility of some werewolves running amok and killing people. Larry tries to save Jenny, but he's not able to, and in the resulting fight, he is also bitten by the werewolf. But his father is a man of science, and so he doesn't really believe him that this has happened. So he thinks it's all like a disease of the mind. Ultimately, Larry does transform into a werewolf and is killed by his father. Lon Chaney Jr. as the main character, as the Wolfman, is a very sympathetic character. Like, I know he was creeping on Gwen in the beginning, but you are truly rooting for him throughout this film. Like, he doesn't want to hurt people, he doesn't want to transform, and when he's restrained himself in the home and he doesn't want to transform into a werewolf and kill people, he actually tells his father to take the silver cane that he bought from Gwen at the beginning, and that's ultimately what his father uses to kill him in the end. So it is a little bit heartbreaking. But I mean, if you are sad and you think the Wolfman's gone forever, there are multiple sequels to this film. You can still run amok and be his adorable, endearing werewolf self. So the deck that I chose to use for today's episode is called the Marigold Tarot, and it's created by Canadian tarot creator and illustrator Amrit Brar. If anybody watching is interested in finding it, you can go to 13thpress.com, and that's her website where you can get the deck. So now let's look at the 2010 remake by the same name. And this film stars Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, Emily Blunt, and Hugo Weaving. And it's also interesting to know that Danny Elfman did the score of the film too. So it really sets a tone. The film visually is beautiful. The music is amazing. And I mean, it's a stacked cast. So it really had all of the ingredients to be a really good remake. And then you watch it. In this one, we learn that Larry has been sent away by his father 18 years previous after a stint in a mental institution. At this point, he gets a letter from Gwen, who in this version of the film is actually married to his brother who dies. So Gwen writes to Larry and says, "Your brother's gone missing, he's dead. I think you should return home." And we also learned that he was kind of close with a community of Romani fortune tellers that were in the area. We see a very kind of complicated relationship between him and his father. Larry wants to get more answers on the mysterious circumstances around his brother's death, so he goes to the Romani camp. So during this conversation, we get a glimpse of the Five of Swords tarot card. This is the only tarot card that appears in this film until the end credits. But the Five of Swords is an interesting choice for this scene and for kind of what transpires in the rest of the film. This card often represents conflicts or past resentments. So I see this as being very much about that relationship between Larry and his father and the kind of unresolved tensions that are brewing, and we soon will learn why as the film progresses. At this point, the townspeople, who have been getting more and more agitated and afraid because there's been all these mysterious deaths that they're blaming on the Romani people, they storm their camp and they're attempting to kill this performance bear that they have, which is like so sad. The bear's so cute in the movie.
He dances, that's all.
And at this time, we also see some of the townspeople starting to get picked off. And we're like, oh, what's going on here? And it turns out the werewolf is afoot and kills a bunch of people, attacks Larry. Before he can escape, Mileva brings him back into her caravan and stitches up his wounds. And at this point, we learn a little bit more of the werewolf lore from how this film sees it.
Sometimes the way of fate is a cruel one. He can only be released by someone who loves him.
Larry's stitched up and he goes home and he makes a fairly quick recovery. And at this point we see he starts to befriend his father's servant's assistant named Singh. And he kind of implies that he's been protecting the family for quite a long time. But we don't really know more than that. So although the film is flawed in many ways, there are some really incredible scenes in it. This film kind of carries on that idea that the father doesn't believe his son, when his son is like fearing this transformation and feeling out of control and knowing that something's wrong. As a final attempt to cure him of his affliction, they strap him to a chair in an observation room and force him to watch the full moon happen, which ends in this bloody, amazing, violent transformation where all of these scientists who think they knew what was up really get what's coming to them. The big twist of the film is, and here's your warning for the 2010 film that I'm going to spoil for you, Anthony Hopkins is a werewolf.
You're heir to my kingdom, Lawrence. You've always been heir to my kingdom.
Maybe you guys saw that twist coming. I didn't. I just thought he was a mean old dad. At the very end of the film, it results in this big battle between father and son werewolf, which is kind of crazy. It's kind of over the top, but I found it very entertaining. But there's more. So there are some tarot cards that we see in the credits at the end of the film, and those are the Moon card and the Death card. I wish that the film would have utilized tarot a little bit more than just having these cards appear in the final credits, because there is so much to be said about the Moon card and the Death card having these archetypes that lend themselves very well to werewolf lore. But it is interesting that they chose to show them in the end credits. The cards that we do see, I find, are very representative of what transpires in the film and also its genuine meanings for each of these cards. They are used correctly, even if I wish they were used a little bit more in the film. In terms of the tarot use in the original film, having an actor like Bela Lugosi play this like fortune teller who's also afflicted with werewolfism and sees these cards and is terrified, I would have just loved like maybe one shot at the table just to see what those cards could have been. But I mean, I guess it is kind of fun to speculate. At least it was fun for me. If I'm rating how the cards were used in the first one, considering I picked them, I think they were used very well. So when I was preparing for this episode, I watched the first film kind of like I went in blind. I had never seen it before. So when I was guessing what cards could have potentially come up in that tarot reading scene, it was genuinely just my thoughts of like the Moon card and the Death card indicating all-encompassing theme of werewolfism. So then when I watched the second film, and when these two cards showed up in the remake in the final credits, I felt a little validated in my choices, because clearly that whoever designed the end credits or pushed to have those two cards featured at that point in the film also thought that these cards tied well to that lore of werewolfism.
It had to be this way.
So that about does it for another episode of Tarot here on RUE MORGUE TV. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I thought it was very fitting because we're getting into the Halloween season. So please let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. And also let me know if there's other films that you'd like us to look at for future episodes. Please like and subscribe to RUE MORGUE TV and join me next time, and we'll see what's in the cards. As Jenny's getting this tarot reading, we can tell that... Oh. No tarot! Is that the Wolfman?